Stranger Things is finally back. It's been like a year and a half since we've seen them, and this season is trying a whole lot of new stuff.
The season begins with Mike and Eleven making out in Eleven's bedroom at Hopper's house, and that's a little silly, but eventually the story moves on to kind of the complicated dynamics between them, between their families, between their friends, and all of these things are tones that the show couldn't do when they were just little kids.
There's a scene later on in the season where Will, he wants to play Dungeons and Dragons forever, and the other guys are like, we want to talk about girls, and it becomes this whole back and forth thing. One thing they also change in this season, which I think they tried to do in season 2 and it didn't totally work, is that they introduced Max, a new girl character, and she didn't really have much of a personality in season 2.
Yeah, she's kind of just like Girl 2.
She's Girl 2.
Yeah.
There's 11 and then there's Girl 2. And this season, they let them be friends, which I think is really good for both of them. And
Yes.
Max does a really good thing where she's like, hey, 11, you don't have to be what Hopper wants you to be. You don't have to be what Mike wants you to be. You can just be you. And of course, this ends up with a shopping montage to Material Girl. Of course, it was always going to happen.
I kind of live for that montage, though. I mean, I feel like Stranger Things gets like 3 very overt, very obvious references a season that I just give a pass to. That was one of them. Popping open a nice cold can of New Coke is another.
Ooh. The other thing 11 has to deal with this season is Hopper as the father of a teenage girl, and his please keep the door open 3 inches at all times rule.
Hopper develops from kind of a lovable man with a lot of quirks to a very kind of angry fellow.
He and Joyce end up basically doing their own thing the whole season.
Right.
And I don't love it overall. He's
Yeah.
pretty aggressive with her. I think it's supposed to be charming. They're like bantery and they're kind of buddy copy.
The perpetual, like, they don't really like each other that much, and there's a real crackle to their conversation, except for just like, they bring very different energies to it. Winona Ryder is definitely like a mood on this show, but like I think
Winina's
she's
operating
best.
at her own frequency.
Yeah, I think she's at her
Bless
best
her.
responding to the crazy monsters and less so driving around rural Indiana in a commandeered car,
Sure.
impersonating a cop.
They're also dealing with one of the storylines that's like the biggest swing the show has taken in a long time,
Yes.
and that's the infiltration of Hawkins by Russians, because it's 1985, it's the Cold War, everyone's very concerned about the Russians, and in this case, Stranger Things has decided to just really go for it with like the most nefarious Russians you've ever seen.
Yes. Yes, no, truly, it's like a Red Dawn style movie, which is the point.
Yeah, they
Like,
literally say,
Yeah.
oh my god, it's like Red Dawn.
Yeah, but I kind of like the like Amblin Entertainment like adventure notes this show strikes more than I like, international intrigue.
One of the biggest new settings of the season is the new Starcourt Mall, which was obviously very big in the 80s,
Yes,
the sort
mall
of emergence
culture.
of mall culture and mall rats and everything. And I think this season does such a fun job with this mall, both as like a central place for all the teens to hang out and also a set piece for some of the show's most ambitious battles.
Yes.
Also, the mall has a movie theater, because of course this mall has a movie theater, and it's playing Back to the Future, and that really plays into it in a really fun way, which I love.
One thing is that it's a quintessential summer movie, and not merely is Stranger Things season 3 dropping in the middle on the 4th of July, it's kind of set around the 4th of July. The town's 4th is like one of the biggest set pieces of the season. Back to the Future lends itself really well to that.
Yeah, and I liked how they literally had it playing in a way that wasn't cheesy. It's just playing in the mall in this movie. And meanwhile, all the kids are having their various misadventures, and it just sort of becomes a Doc Marty McFly walkie-talkie moment.
Yes.
And it's so fun because the score is happening in the background. Like that's one of those moments that I was like, oh, this is what Stranger Things can do
Yes.
really well. When it does that well, that's so fun.
It itself feels like a summer movie.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a summer blockbuster. I always get annoyed when TV shows are like, we're an 8-hour movie, but that really does feel like what this is. But it also feels like the show. Like that's what the show's always been chasing, and it really feels like one of those. One of the finale's most intriguing aspects is the fact that it ends with Eleven's powers basically being gone. They're diminished, they're really weakened by this whole fight she's had with the Mind Flayer once more. And I am really excited to see what happens when they don't have 11 around to clean up their
Right.
messes for them.
Right.
They really have to get more intuitive than just being like, 11 will figure it out.
I think it opens up whole new possibilities for the character.
Right, I really want to see what Millie Bobby Brown is going to do when she doesn't have to just be like staring at a thing.
Right. One thing I know we both really liked this season was the addition of Robin, played by Maya Hawke. and she is kind of a coworker of Steve's at the ice cream parlor.
Scoops Ahoy.
Scoops Ahoy, who has a very kind of like, in the movie, she would be like the sidekick, and she's constantly putting him in his place. However, she comes to be kind of an invaluable companion as they work together to figure out what's going on at the mall.
One actor who I really love on this show, who I think has made so much out of his part that could have been really flat otherwise, is Joe Keery as Steve.
Yes.
He's really turned what was once just like a random cool jerk guy into a really interesting character. And so him working at this ice cream shop, he's annoyed about it. His hair is covered by this stupid hat.
Yeah.
The girls don't like him as much. His powers are diminished, and his new coworker is making so much fun of him. But as they get involved in trying to figure out what the Russians are up to in Hawkins, they become really good friends, and their friendship is such a good part of this season, especially because at one point it seems like they're going to be flirty, like they're going to get together. Mm-hmm. And when Steve is kind of like, hey, you're actually very cool and I would like to date you maybe, she's like, ooh, I have a crush on this girl though. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
So many of the characters on the show are necessarily tropes from 80s stuff, and
right.
They don't often get to be much more than that, and Robin really does, especially for that moment. And I loved that scene, especially because Steve like takes a minute, absorbs it, and then is like, you can do better than her, and then they're just friends.
Yes.
And I think it's so funny and good, and the two of them as characters and actors really make the most of it in a way that I really just want to see more of it. So I ended the season just being really excited about all the different groups that they were trying out, all the different character combinations. We get Lucas's little sister gets to be more of a character.
Yes.
So she's hanging out with Steve and Dustin and Robin, and that's such a good foursome. And even if it's not going to be Scoop's Troop, I want to see more of Scoop's Troop.
Yeah, I love how in its final moments, the show reshuffled the deck once more, and in season 4, we will be seeing the Byers family and Eleven living together in another town, and potentially coming back to visit, but potentially encountering other stuff. And I have a whole new confidence that this show can have that kind of long run, and I'm very excited for however many years it is from now for Stranger Things season 4, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it.